Almost everyone using AI right now doesn't understand the basics. They don't understand what they prompt. They can't explain the workflows they copy, and they wonder why every output they get is so half-baked. Google quietly released a 4-hour AI course that teaches these fundamentals. But I'm gonna break it down for you in 10 minutes. Hi, I'm Sadie. I've spent over 10 years in data science and AI. I've led teams at Fortune 500 companies, and I've trained over 700,000 people in AI. So let's learn the foundations. First, we have to understand what AI is in plain language. The term artificial intelligence is very misleading. Where it comes from is a term called machine learning, and that to me is much easier to understand because it means a machine can learn. Unlike traditional programming, where we explicitly had to tell a computer every little thing that it needed to do, is where software can find patterns from data and learn from that, meaning we don't have to explicitly program every output from the computer. You can think of this kind of like teaching a kid. It's teaching through experiences, and that is the data. Those are like our senses that we take in data as humans on a daily basis. For computers, their senses are zeros and ones. And so what we do is we feed a computer, more particularly an algorithm, lots of different data, and it learns patterns from that data. And from the learning, it can create new things and produce outputs and predictions, just like we as humans learn by interacting in the real world, and then can take what we learn and go and create things. For example, have you ever seen a little kid pointing at an animal and they mumble how it's said, maybe cow? And what you quickly see is a parent who can interpret what they said and what they're pointing at and quickly share with them the correct version. They'll say, yes, that's a cow, or no, that's a cat, regarding whatever they were pointing to. This is similar to how machines learn. And this is a process which we call reinforcement learning. So it's a process where, just as we talked about feeding it lots of data into an algorithm and it learns from the data, reinforcement learning is like that extra parent on top who's reinforcing what they want the behavior to be or what they want the sound to be. In this case, we're reinforcing to the computer what we want it to say or do and the output of it. But again, this really starts with the quality and the quantity of the training data that you put into it. Just like humans, where we are both nature and nurture, it depends on what information we get to absorb. If you get to go to a great school, you're probably going to score better on SAT and ACT tests. Similarly, a machine learning model or an AI model, if you're giving really high quality data and examples to high literature, you're probably going to speak different or talk different than a model that was trained with different data. What's amazing about AI and where it truly excels is how much data it can take in. For example, a machine learning algorithm can process thousands to millions of books. If I had unlimited time, could not even do in my lifetime. So where AI shines is in the depth and the quantity of digital information. Where humans shine is those shallow edge cases that only we as a human can experience, but more importantly, we take in through physical aspects and our physical bodies. What's great though is we as humans created AI, and so we can team up with AI. Humans are great at providing the context to create and see how they want the algorithm to use. AI is this power horse to have read the entirety of the internet, something I will never do in my lifetime, and I get to work with it as a thought partner. Well, the best results really come when we become collaborators. When we take the aspects of what makes me, Sadie, unique as a human, my life experiences, my relationships, where I get to go on a daily basis and how I get to interact, and combine that with the power of AI that processes more information than I could ever even imagine. If you like learning AI this way, I write a weekly newsletter where I share tips, tricks, and best practices for collaborating with AI. It's actionable just like this video, so sign up, put it in your inbox, and let's get chatting on a weekly basis. Links in the description. So where most people really struggle is knowing how and where do I use AI? Where do I use this genius in my pocket? Things AI is really good at: brainstorming, analysis, editing, creating first drafts, and helping you learn new things. If you are new to AI, anytime you think, should I use AI for this? Try. Just try once. You are not going to hurt anyone or anything by trying to use AI for a task. Because remember, you do not have to take the output that you get from AI and share it with somebody. It doesn't have to be your final work product. So just try. Does that mean it's going to be your best partner, or it's going to replace the way you were doing it before? No, not necessarily. But you at least need to try, because you're never going to find out how it can assist you if you don't start to ask. So my rule for should I use AI or shouldn't I is always yes, you should. Now, when should you not use AI? Again, you should try and see what works for you. But one of the ways I see people really go wrong with AI is using it to replace their own thinking. So if you're writing, let's say, a social media post on quantum computing and you know nothing about quantum computing and you just ask it to write you a post about quantum computing, you're not A, going to be a good judge of it, B, you're not going to know if what you're saying is anything of quality or relevance, and C, you could really spread a lot of misinformation. So if you don't have any knowledge of that area, you need to learn and upskill yourself before you can really take the outputs of it. You need to make sure you understand and you have your own context for these areas as well. Okay, it's time to get to the nitty-gritty. I want to show you what writing a bad prompt looks like versus writing a good prompt. So we're gonna head over to one of my favorite friends, Claude, and start by just asking it to write a follow-up email to a client. So if I put this into Claude and ask it, hey, can you write me a follow-up email to a client? What do I get? Not much, because I didn't give it any context, right? It says, yes, I'd love to, but you're gonna need to give me a lot more information so that I can properly assess and do this. Again, when we talk about what makes prompting great, it comes down to context. Context is key. So what it looks like writing a good prompt is this. Here I have it say, write a follow-up email to Sarah, who's a CMO, what company she works with. I give it background. I let it know what the email should say. Thank you, suggest 15 minutes. And then I also give it an example of my typical follow-up style. What this does is this is providing so much context. This is something that I think about if I had an executive assistant and I wanted them to work on my behalf and write some emails. This is a great method and way to be able to do it. So just the same way I would prompt my executive assistant, I will prompt my AI assistant the same way, because I know that the more detail I give it, the better output I'm going to get. So here we can see I have now the deep context necessary for the model. And not only did I get a great email, but with Claude, I have two options, A, warm and confident, or B, direct and concise. And so automatically you can just see how much faster I went from here's what I need help with to getting to the endpoint just by providing it that level of context necessary. So it sounds simple, but if I could break a 4-hour class into 10 minutes, that is context is king. And my best hack to provide a lot of context is something very simple. It's a microphone. Why do I love using a microphone? You don't have to use like a fancy microphone. You can use your AirPods, whatever you want. But using a mic is so helpful because you're gonna talk like you naturally would, like you would talk to one of your employees. And you're gonna give it a lot more context. It's so much easier to talk than it is to type. So use a mic. We would be amiss if we did not talk about the pros and cons of using AI, particularly using AI responsibly. So one of the things that comes up with AI is bias. And it makes sense why there's bias in AI is because we as humans are biased. And most of the data that was created is created by humans, and humans have made biased decisions in the past. So we take that historical data and those historical biased decisions and we put it into the model. This is just like a kid can learn bad behaviors from its parents. Our little baby AI models can learn bad behaviors from us. So what do we do for that? Again, we as the humans are still in the driver's seat. So you must review and assess the output from AI and make sure that you're assessing it for bias. Second, when you're working with AI, we need to think about privacy and confidentiality. For most organizations, they have either a privacy policy or a data security policy. You should look up both of these policies if you're using AI at work to make sure the AI models you're using comply. You may also have an AI policy or AI guidelines that will be helpful to look at, but most importantly, you want to make sure that you're not uploading private confidential information to the model unless you've turned off settings for retraining your model and can keep it in a closed loop private environment. Last but not least, we do kind of have to be careful about over-reliance on AI. And the reason for that is we still need to know what we're talking about as humans. Again, we're the ones in the driver's seat so that we know how to drive, where we're driving, and most importantly, how to drive safely. AI can make you fake it till you make it. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to. So my recommendation, please do not have an over-reliance on AI. It's this amazing thought partner, but make sure you're still learning and you're still growing. If you keep jumping between AI tools and feel behind, or you keep spending little time learning the basics so everything actually starts to feel easier, if you want more breakdowns like this, then you need to subscribe to my newsletter. And if you want to learn how to build your first AI agent with NAN, my personal favorite, click on the video on the screen.